Anton Pavlovich Chekhov was born in the provincial town of Taganrog, Russia, on January 29, 1860. The grandson of a serf, Chekhov was the third of 7 children. Chekhov said of his early days, "There was no childhood in my childhood," largely because of his father Pavel, who frequently forced Chekhov to tend the family's unheated food and hardware store until late at night. Chekhov's father beat his children and taught them how to cheat customers. Yet he was in his own eyes a religious man. He forced his children into a religious choir that rehearsed frequently and sang at various churches. Chekhov disliked these duties. It is not surprising that in later life he was not a religious man, that he spent his life trying to burn the slave out of him and become a man of culture, and that he became convinced that work was useless unless it improved humankind's lot. Chekhov described the Russian life of his time using a deceptively single technique devoid of obstructive literary devices, and he is regarded as the outstanding representative of the late 19th century Russia realist school. Chekhov's fiction is a model of a clear observation and concise expression and with a number of written instructions. Chekhov points out in his famous stories such as The Lady of the Dog, The Dear One, and The Kiss that short fiction can be about characters instead of events, and that it does not need deceptive endings. So the author does not have the need to be a judge or a jury. However, for him, the narrator is a silent and objective observer with an undeclared but comprehensive moral point of view. He thought that in the way the characters see themselves is more important than as the author sees them, allowing the reader to understand the characters even more. The 3 sisters, Olga, Masha, and Irina Prosorov. They live with their brother Andrei in a big house in a small town in Russia. The townspeople are boring compared to their educated and culture-loving family. Believe it or not, the only interesting people around are military guys. Basically, the Prosorov kids are worldly, well-educated army brats. And being in the army in Tsarist Russia pretty much meant you were in with the aristocracy. So ever since the family moved to Moscow 11 years prior, the sisters have been obsessed over the dream of moving back to the big city. But it's not happening. Olga, the eldest, is a schoolteacher. Masha, the middle sister, is married to another schoolteacher, Kuligin, whom she despises. She has an affair with the officer Vershinin. Irina, the youngest, has fanciful ideas about the value of work, but soon realizes that in reality work sucks the life out of her. She's also in love with the idea of love, but doesn't get to experience it. Finally, she comes around to saying yes to Baron Tusenbach, a friendly but ugly man who's been after her for years. On the day they're leaving to get married, he gets shot in a duel. Andrei, the brother, gives up on his intellectual dreams to pursue a town girl, Natasha. They marry, have kids, and she takes over the state. At the end of the play, the upper-class Prosorovs are pretty much evicted from their own house, while Natasha, a symbol of the working class, is on the rise. This was just a few years before the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The Cherry Orchard. Act 1 opens with the businessman Lopakin and maid Dunyasha waiting for the owners of the Hranevskaya estate, the mistress of the house Lyubov Hranevskaya, her brother Gaev, and daughter Anya. They arrive in the middle of the night with others, the governess Charlota, the manservant Yasha, a friend named Simeon Pisik, and other servants. Varya, Lyubov's adopted daughter, is there too. Tearful reunions and a general catching up happened. Those who stayed home report on the orchard, and those who left report on Paris. Lopaking still hasn't proposed to Varia. Lubov lost all her money supporting a scam. The cherry orchard will definitely be sold to pay their debt. And the elderly servant, Fierce, is still alive. Lopaking has an idea to save their house. He's attached to it because he grew up there, the son of a serf. Lopaking proposes clearing the land to lease it for summer homes. Neither Lubov nor Gaev can process the idea. Just before everyone goes to bed, the student, Trofimov, enters. He was the tutor to Lubov's deceased young son, and the sight of his face makes her cry for her dead child. In Act 2, we're at a picnic in the cherry orchard. Some weeks have passed. The aristocrats arrive with Lopaking, who is still making plans to save the state. Lubov knows they need to do something, but to her the idea of summer homes is not the best. Trofimov enters with Anya and Varia, and they talk about Varia's engagement. Trofimov's eternal student status, telegrams from Lubov's never-do-well Parisian lover, and the orchard again and again. A homeless man enters the scene, drunk and singing. He asks for money and Lubov gives him a gold piece, an oversized donation she immediately regrets upon his exit. Everyone leaves, and finally Trofimov and Anya are left alone. Under his influence, she comes to see the orchard differently. It's no longer the magical center of her childhood, but a symbol of the injustice her family inflicted on others. Act 3 is set in August, back at the family estate. Lubov is throwing a party. There are numbers of little arguments and discussions, but the main event is the arrival of Lopaking. He and Gaev have come for the auction of the cherry orchard. Lubov's been on pins and needles waiting to hear what happened. Lopaking bought the estate. The former son of a serf who worked on the estate now owns it. Lubov is crushed, but Anya gently tells her to move on. Act 4 takes place in October, outside the estate. Everyone is moving out, and Lopaking, no master of sensitivity, offers champagne. Each character says goodbye to the house in their own way. Anya and Trofimov are excited about the future. Lubov and Gaev are distraught, but trying to keep it together. The Seagull. In Act 1, the Nikolaev family is gathered at their awesome summer house. Big brother Soren, 60-year-old, lives at the estate. His famous sister Arkadina has arrived for a vacation with her lover, Trigorin. Arkadina's son, Konstantin, has been laboring at an original play that premieres that night and stars the beautiful neighbor girl, Nina, whom he loves. A couple of weeks later, in Act 2, Nina has fallen out of love with Konstantin. When he shoots a seagull and threatens to kill himself, she just moves farther away from him, and towards the writer Trigorin. The attraction is mutual, to the fury of Arkadina. Medvedenko is in love with Masha. Masha is in love with Konstantin, and Paulina is in love with Doran. Soren gets sicker, and Shamprayev still enjoys torturing the aristocrats by denying them horses. In Act 3, Arkadina and Trigorin are preparing to return to Moscow. Nina indirectly declares her love for Trigorin, who feels the same way. He'd like to stay. No way, no how, says Arkadina, and pulls out all the actressy stops to get him back. She's much more concerned about preserving her romantic relationship than the one with her son, who has shot himself in despair over Nina's rejection. Arkadina leaves the house with Trigorin, but not before he has promised to see Nina in Moscow. Masha plans to marry Medvedenko. Act 4 begins 2 years later. Masha is unhappily married to Medvedenko, and they have a neglected baby. Konstantin lives at home with his uncle. He recounts the sad story of Nina, who hooked up with Trigorin, lost the baby, and was abandoned, and has become a mediocre actress. Because Soren is very ill, Arkadina and Trigorin drop in to visit. The glamorous couple offers mildly encouraging words to Konstantin, who has become a Polish writer. While the others socialize, Konstantin receives a visit from Nina. Nervous and ill, she just stopped in before she had to go on her way again to an acting gig in a small town. Constantine begs her to stay with him, but Nina, still in love with Trigorin, rejects him. She leaves, and Constantine goes back into the next room and shoots himself.
We shall say that we have suffered and wept, that our life was bitter, and God will have pity on us. Ah, then, dear, dear uncle, we shall see that bright and beautiful life. We shall rejoice and look back upon our sorrow here. A tender smile, and we shall rest. I have faith, uncle, fervent, passionate faith. We shall rest. We shall hear the angels. We shall see heaven shining like a jewel. We shall see all evil and all our pain sink away in the great compassion that shall enfold the world. Our life will be as peaceful and tender and sweet as a caress. I have faith. I have faith.
In this text, he is talking to his uncle about life and faith. He is telling him how they shall live their lives when they are both young and old, how they shall see a beautiful and bright life ahead of them, but also how they shall rest. Even though Anton didn't come from much, with his mother being the daughter of a merchant and his father a grocer, he managed to rise up and become someone in this world. He first trained as a physician and then began practicing medicine. In fact, he first started writing when he was studying medicine. He eventually elevated him and his family from poverty with all he gained from his writings.